Okay, welcome. This is a presentation on how to do a full case citation. You're going to use a full citation anytime in your document that you use a case for the first time. So the parts of a full citation are the party names, which make the case name, the location of where the case can be found, the court and the date it was decided, and of course using correct formatting. So this is just a basic overview of what a formula would look like for a full citation. You have the party names, the volume of the reporter and the page number, and then the court it was decided in and the date. I just want to point out that there's no period. When you're using a volume number and a page number, you don't put a period after it. It's just like this here because these words are abbreviated. Secondly, the reason why there's two different options is because you can either italicize or underline your party names, but just be consistent throughout your document. Just choose one and stick with it, and do not put the comma included in that. So the comma should not be italicized and the comma should not be underlined. So the first part is going to be the case name. Like I just said, make sure that you either italicize it or underline it throughout your document, and the same thing with the comma. And you're going to make sure that you're checking your spaces, periods, capitalization, all that stuff. So both of these examples, Lannister v. Stark, Snape v. Riddle, would be correctly written. It seems pretty basic. It's just that when you have multiple party names, it might get confusing, or when you have to abbreviate things, it might get confusing. But you're just going to stick with one of the first party's name on both sides and then abbreviate it as the Blue Book provides. You really do need to look at rules 10.21 and 10.22. This is in the white part of your Blue Book. It's also in the PDF posted on Blackboard. Many rules for how to abbreviate and omit and what you need to do for party names. I just screenshotted some of what's in the PDF. It's really helpful. So if you haven't taken a look at it yet, I would highly recommend it. There's really no way to know what you can't just wing this. You have to look in the Blue Book or on Blackboard in order to know how to do this. So these pages are going to help you in the Blue Book for case names: B 4.1, R10, and T6. B means that it's in the blue pages. We use the blue pages for what we're doing in class, and the white pages are used for like law review. So anytime you see a B, that means it's in the blue pages. R just means rule, and that's in the white pages. So you'll notice that the blue pages are much thinner. So sometimes we do need to look in the white pages. And then T6 means table. 6, that's going to show you how to abbreviate any word that's long and you need to cut it down. Shows you what to do. So make sure to use those rules and those pages to help you. So after each section, I'm just going to give you a second. You can pause it to think about which one you think is correct, but based on what you just saw, which one of these titles or case names is correct. This is the correct answer. The first one, there's no period after the V, so that's incorrect. And on this one, the comma was included in the underline, so that's incorrect. The second part is the reporter, or where it's found. When you're talking about the case location, you're going to include the volume name, the reporter, the volume number, the reporter number, and the page name, comma, the page number, the information that you're citing to is found on. The biggest thing here is to be careful with spacing. With the reporters, it can get confusing of whether or not you need a space. Rule 6.1a is going to be a huge help on that, and these other pages will help you as well. One thing to note is when you're citing to a case that comes from Florida, use your Florida legal research book, not the Blue Book. This is an example. This is just taken out of the Blue Book. This is for Oklahoma. So if you needed to cite to a case decided by the Oklahoma Supreme Court, you would include the volume, the reporter, which would be one of these, and you would know when you're citing which one you have to use. It's the Pacific Reporter. It's just either the second version or the third edition, and then the page number that it starts. So 1, 2, 3 that's the volume. P.2D is the Pacific Reporter second edition, and then 342 is the page that it starts on, the opinion starts on. So which one of these is correct? This is the correct answer because there needs to be a space. This is the Southern Reporter 2nd edition, and there should be a space between SO and 2D. Again, Rule 6.1 is going to be your best friend. The last thing that you need to include is the court and the date. This is going to be in a parenthetical at the end of your citation. For state courts, you can use Table 1.3, and for federal courts, BT 2.1. Just keep in mind that when you're abbreviating second and third, it becomes 2D and 3D. You don't put the N or the R that you would typically see in that abbreviation. And also do not allow your computer to autocorrect these numbers. As soon as it tries to do that, just click undo. I know on a Mac it's Command Z. I think on a PC it's Control Z, and it will just put it back like that. So for courts, Florida again is different. So which one of these is the correct answer? And this is the correct. There's actually a mistake here. If you see it after I just said that, this should be Florida first. This part should not be little. It should be big. But if you look in the Blue Book, this is how the Blue Book tells you to cite it. But we have 5 DCAs in Florida, so you need to be more specific. You can't just say District Court of Appeal. So this is actually the correct answer. So that's the end of the presentation part, and I'm just gonna do 2 sample problems if you want to see exactly how to work through it. Okay, so this is what your citation worksheet is going to look like. You're going to get a blurb of information, and you need to condense that down into a full citation. I would recommend pausing the video here and reading through this, and also try to work through it yourself as much as you can, and then push play when you're ready to see how I would recommend working through it. Okay, so the first thing that you need to decide is if there's anything that's extraneous or you don't necessarily need it. And in this case, we have something that we don't necessarily need for the purposes of the legal writing class. So you're citing to this case in a brief to a state court in New Hampshire. We don't need that for our purposes in this class. Out in practice, you would need to follow the jurisdiction where you're filing a brief, how they want you to cite. But because this is just an example for class, we're just going to use the Blue Book. The exception to using the Blue Book would be anytime you see something that has to do with Florida courts, you're going to use Florida Rule of Appellate Procedure 9.800. So the first thing that we need to start with is our case name and the parties that are in the case. So here, that's the very first sentence. I'm just going to highlight it so that you can see it easier. Here we have W.R. Grayson Company versus Maryland Casualty Company. When you are writing the case names, you need to decide, can anything be omitted and can anything be abbreviated? So right off the bat, you should see that et al. Can be omitted. We don't need that. Then these 2 company names, those are company names. They're not widely known, so you do need to keep them. You do need to keep the full case name, but we are going to be able to abbreviate some things. There's 5 words actually in here that we're going to abbreviate. Hopefully you can figure it out before I tell you what it is, but here goes nothing. So we have W.R. Grace, that's going to stay, and company should be no surprise really that it's going to abbreviate to CO period. Then versus, we can, that seems obvious, but we're going to abbreviate that as well. Don't forget your period after the V. Maryland, you can use table T10 to help you with state names, and that's going to abbreviate to MD. Casualty, look at table T6. Again, the tables are in the back of the Blue Book. It's CAS, and then company, CO, period, and then don't forget the comma. The next thing you need to do is decide whether or not you're going to underline or italicize. I'm going to italicize. I just need to make sure that I unitalicize my comma, and also that everything else isn't italicized now. So what do we need next? Hopefully you remember that the volume number is the next thing that comes. So our volume number is going to be 600. That's pretty cut and dry. Just put that, and then we're done with this. Let's also say that we're done with this. And then we're going to need our reporter. Okay, so the reporter's Northeastern Reporter second series. The way that you would find out how to abbreviate that is, since this is in Massachusetts, if you go to table T2 in your blue book and you look for Massachusetts, it's going to show you the reporters, okay? Massachusetts obviously is not the only state that's going to use that reporter, so if you knew for some reason what other states were using the Northeastern Reporter, you could also flip to those pages. But we're going to need Massachusetts anyways, so you may as well turn to that page. So Northeastern Reporter becomes capital N period, capital E period, 2D. So there's not going to be any space in between any of these things because we have capital letters and then the number is going to count kind of like a capital letter. So we don't need that. The next thing that we're going to need is the page number that it starts on. So we have right here that it starts on page 176. So you just put 176 and then put a comma, because the next thing that we're going to need is our pin site. The pin site is the exact page or pages where the information we're using is coming from. So in this case, we're having page 178. Sometimes you might have longer page ranges, but you always do need to include the pin site. Even if the information that we were getting from this was on page 176, you would still put 176, comma 176, okay? Then we need to put our parentheses, and we need to figure out how to do our court and the date. So if you're still on that Massachusetts page in your blue book, you'll see that the Appeals Court of Massachusetts is abbreviated as Mass App CT period, and then for the year, you just put 1992. Close your parentheses, and please do not forget the period at the end. Everything always needs to end with a period. So hopefully you either got this when you worked it out on your own or you understood each step that we went through. If not, try to figure out where you went wrong. And if you're still confused, make sure to ask during our citation workshop how exactly we got this. We're going to do one more sample, and this is going to be a Florida sample question. So on this one, you're going to need to use the Florida Rule of Appellate Procedure 9.800. That you can find that either by Googling it or you can just look on Blackboard. It's posted under assignments in the citation reading. So that has basically anytime you're going to cite to something that happened in Florida, it tells you what to do. So again, I would pause the video, read through this. This time I really would encourage you, if you didn't on the last one, to work through it on your own. And then when you're done, push play and see if you got the right answer. Okay, so State of Florida Appellant versus James Rabb Appellee. Here's our party names. Okay, so this is important, and also it might be kind of confusing. When you have State of Florida, you're obviously going to be able to omit some words from that. Because this is a case that took place in a Florida court, you're able to eliminate of Florida. So you're just going to keep state. The reason why is because when we put the court location in our parenthetical, it's going to say Florida, or it's going to have, an abbreviation of a Florida court. So it's just redundant to keep State of Florida in the party name. So you can just make it state. So State v, and then when you have a person's name, you just keep their last name. So State v. Rabb, comma, then either italicize it or underline it. We're done here. The next part, hopefully you're starting to get it now, is volume number. So the volume is 920. And then the next part you need is the reporter. This is the Southern Reporter second series. So I can tell you that this is where I made a mistake almost every time last year. For some reason, I just could not remember about spacing. So it's SO period and then space 2D. Okay, that space, hopefully you'll learn from my mistakes and you won't make it, but I made that mistake constantly last year. So SO period space 2D. Then we need our page number, which is going to be 1175. And we always, always, always need the pin site. So here, the pin site is going to be 1191. That's what page we're pulling information from. Then we need to put the court and date information. So this is where Florida's rules differ from what the blue book, says. So this is Florida's 4th District Court of Appeal on February 15th, 2016. So our rule is going to tell us that the 4th District Court of Appeal is FLA period 4th. When that goes to that superscript, do undo, and then DCA is the District Court of Appeal. The year, 2006, close parentheses, period. So hopefully you didn't get tripped up on anything there. Again, make sure you're double checking your periods, spaces, and then italicizing, and if you do that, then you should be good to go. The biggest thing is just to be very detail oriented. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask us, and we are going to go over more practice examples of how to do this during the citation workshop. Hope you enjoyed this little video, and we will see you in class.